He thought it was just another argument between a couple. What Daniel Kong heard next dragged him back to the worst night of his life. Maya Johnson's hand trembled around the tray as she stepped away from table 12, forcing herself to keep her smile in place even though her stomach felt like stone. Friday nights at Harbor Light Steakhouse were always busy. The dining room glowed with warm amber light. Glasses clinked softly, and the scent of grilled ribeye drifted through the air. To everyone around her, it looked like another ordinary evening in downtown Seattle. But Maya had spent the entire night feeling the weight of Travis Walker's eyes following her across the restaurant. He sat alone near the center of the room, nursing the same drink for almost an hour, watching every move she made. Every time she laughed politely at a customer's joke, his jaw tightened. Every time she stopped at another table, he seemed to grow more irritated. Maya knew the signs. She had learned them over 3 long years. She knew which expressions meant silence later, which ones meant accusations, which ones meant another endless night of explaining herself. She also knew how to survive them. Keep your voice soft. Keep your head down. Avoid making things worse. That had become her routine. Across the restaurant, seated in a private corner booth reserved for special guests, Daniel Kong reviewed a contract while his associates discussed business matters in low voices. At 38, Daniel had built a reputation that made powerful men nervous. Calm, disciplined, impossible to read. His tailored charcoal suit fit perfectly, and his posture never changed, even when million-dollar decisions were being discussed around him. Yet despite the conversation at his table, his attention drifted toward the young waitress moving through the dining room. There was something about her expression that caught his eye. Maya smiled constantly, but her eyes never joined the smile. Daniel had noticed people like that before. People carrying burdens too heavy to share. At exactly 8:17 p.m., Maya approached Travis's table with the check. Her hands remained steady. Her voice remained polite. She thanked him for coming in and wished him a good evening. What happened next caused several nearby conversations to stop. Travis stood abruptly. His chair scraped against the hardwood floor. The sound cut through the restaurant. Maya froze. The smile disappeared from her face. Travis leaned closer. His voice was low enough that most people missed the words, but not everyone. Not Daniel. You're dead when we get home, Travis said through clenched teeth. The sentence lasted less than 3 seconds. But for Maya, it felt much longer. The color drained from her face. Her eyes immediately dropped toward the floor. She whispered something nobody could hear. An apology, perhaps. A plea. Then she simply nodded, as if she had heard those words before. Across the room, Daniel's fingers stopped moving. The contract remained open in front of him, forgotten. His associates continued talking, unaware that he was no longer listening. Because 24 years earlier, on a rainy October night, another frightened woman had lowered her eyes exactly the same way. And moments before everything changed forever, Daniel had heard those exact words spoken to his mother. Maya had no idea that someone else had heard every word. And she certainly had no idea that the quiet man sitting in the corner was no ordinary customer. Maya Johnson had become an expert at pretending everything was fine. Long before she started working at Harbor Light Steakhouse, she had learned that most people only saw what was placed directly in front of them. A smile could hide exhaustion. A polite laugh could hide worry. A simple, "I am okay," could hide an entire life that felt like it was slowly shrinking. At 26 years old, Maya worked 2 jobs, often leaving her apartment before sunrise and returning long after dark. The small 1-bedroom apartment she rented in South Seattle was nothing special, but it was home. More importantly, it was close enough to the community college where her younger brother, Marcus, attended classes. Ever since their mother passed away from illness 6 years earlier, Maya had taken responsibility for helping him build a future. She paid bills, covered groceries whenever she could, and quietly postponed many of her own dreams. She told herself it was temporary, just a few more years, just until Marcus graduated. Then things would get better. At least that was what she wanted to believe. Travis Walker had entered her life 3 years earlier during one of the hardest periods she had ever faced. Back then, he seemed confident, charming, and supportive. When she was grieving, he listened. When she felt overwhelmed, he offered reassurance. Maya remembered those early days often because they no longer seemed real. Somewhere along the way, the man she met had disappeared. In his place stood someone who questioned everything she did. Someone who always seemed unhappy. Someone who made her feel responsible for problems she did not create. Yet every time she considered walking away, Travis would apologize. He would promise improvement. He would speak about the future they were supposedly building together. And Maya, wanting to believe people could change, always gave him another chance. As she cleared dishes from a table near the kitchen entrance, she caught her reflection in a decorative mirror hanging on the wall. For a brief moment, she barely recognized herself. The woman staring back looked tired. Not physically tired, soul tired. The kind of exhaustion that came from carrying invisible weight every single day. Nearby, customers laughed over dessert while soft jazz drifted from hidden speakers. The restaurant remained warm and inviting. Yet Maya felt strangely cold. Across the dining room, Daniel Kong watched her move between tables. Years of reading people had taught him to notice details others missed. The slight hesitation before she approached certain customers. The way she checked her phone and immediately slipped it back into her pocket without responding. The way relief briefly appeared on her face whenever she thought nobody was looking. None of those things alone meant much. Together, they told a story. Daniel had spent decades building an empire by recognizing patterns. And the pattern he saw tonight felt disturbingly familiar. Maya finished delivering a check and glanced toward the front windows where rain had begun tapping softly against the glass. She wondered how long it would take to get home. She wondered what kind of mood Travis would be in by then. Most of all, she wondered why she still felt afraid of disappointing someone who seemed impossible to please. What Maya did not know was that for the first time in years, someone had noticed the burden she carried. And unlike everyone else who had looked away, Daniel Kong was not certain he could do the same. The dinner rush finally began to slow around 9 o'clock, but the tension surrounding Maya seemed to grow heavier with every passing minute. Harbor Light Steakhouse remained filled with soft conversation and warm light, yet she felt increasingly aware of Travis sitting near the front windows. He had not left. He had not ordered anything else. He simply watched. Every time Maya crossed the dining room, she could feel his attention following her. At first, she tried convincing herself she was imagining it. Then her phone vibrated inside her apron pocket. During a brief moment near the service station, she glanced at the screen. 3 messages, all from Travis. The first asked why she had smiled at a customer. The second demanded to know why she had spent several minutes speaking with another table. The third simply read, "Do not ignore me." Maya locked the screen immediately. Her chest tightened. She knew responding would not help. It never helped. A few feet away, another waitress named Rachel noticed her expression. "You okay?" she asked quietly while stacking menus. Maya forced a smile. "Just tired." Rachel nodded, accepting the answer. Most people did. Maya had become very good at making difficult things sound ordinary. A few minutes later, she approached a family celebrating a birthday. They thanked her for the excellent service and handed her a generous tip. The young daughter at the table even complimented her earrings. For a brief moment, Maya genuinely smiled. It lasted less than 5 seconds. Across the room, Travis saw it. When Maya returned to the service station, another message appeared. "You seem happier with strangers than with me." She closed her eyes. Somewhere deep inside, exhaustion began replacing fear. She could not remember the last time she had spent an entire day without worrying about someone else's reaction. She could not remember the last time she felt free. From his corner booth, Daniel Kong continued observing quietly. His associates had already finished discussing business matters, but he remained seated. One of them noticed his attention drifting repeatedly toward the dining room. "Everything all right?" the man asked. Daniel's gaze never moved. "Fine." It was not entirely true. Because the pattern was becoming clearer. The nervous glances. The constant messages. The way Maya seemed to shrink whenever she checked her phone. Daniel had witnessed similar behavior years earlier among employees trapped in controlling relationships. People often believed suffering announced itself loudly. In reality, it usually appeared in whispers. A lowered gaze. A forced smile. A person apologizing for things that were never their fault. Near closing time, Maya finally stepped outside through the employee entrance behind the restaurant to collect herself for a moment. Cool rain drifted through the night air. Seattle's skyline shimmered beyond the wet pavement. She inhaled deeply, hoping the fresh air would calm her thoughts. Instead, her phone rang. "Travis." She stared at the screen. The call ended. Then another immediately followed. Then another. Maya slipped the phone back into her pocket without answering. For the first time all evening, a dangerous thought crossed her mind. What if she simply left? What if she got into her car and drove somewhere else? Somewhere quiet. Somewhere nobody expected anything from her. The idea lasted only seconds before reality returned. Inside the restaurant, Daniel watched through the rain-speckled window as Maya stood alone beneath the glow of a security light. He recognized that expression. It was the look of someone standing at a crossroads without realizing it. And before this night was over, Maya Johnson was about to face a choice that would change the course of her life. Daniel Kong had spent most of his life believing that the past could be buried beneath success. Money helped. Power helped. Time helped most of all. Yet some memories never truly disappeared. They simply waited. As rain traced slow paths down the restaurant windows, Daniel found himself staring beyond the present and into a night he had spent 24 years trying to forget. He had been 14 years old when he first learned how helpless a person could feel. His family had lived in a small apartment above a grocery store outside Tacoma. The place had smelled like coffee and old wood. His mother had worked long shifts and still managed to smile every evening when she came home. She had been the strongest person Daniel had ever known. But strength did not always protect people from unhappiness. As a teenager, Daniel had often heard arguments through thin apartment walls, raised voices, long silences, apologies that seemed to solve nothing. He remembered sitting at the kitchen table pretending to finish homework while watching his mother insist that everything was fine. He remembered believing her because he wanted to. Then one rainy October evening, he heard a sentence he never forgot. A sentence spoken with anger and certainty. A sentence that transformed fear into reality. After that night, Daniel stopped believing that people always found help when they needed it. Sometimes nobody noticed. Sometimes people noticed and looked away. That lesson shaped everything that came afterward. It fueled his ambition. It hardened his resolve. It pushed him to build a life where nobody could ever ignore him again. Back in the present, Daniel's phone vibrated softly on the table. One of his associates was asking whether they should leave. Daniel typed a brief response. Not yet. Across the parking lot, Maya remained beneath the security light outside the employee entrance. Her shoulders were slightly hunched against the cold rain. Every few seconds, she glanced toward her phone before slipping it back into her pocket. To most observers, she looked like someone waiting for a ride home. Daniel saw something else. He saw hesitation. He saw someone fighting an internal battle nobody else could see. Inside the restaurant, employees began preparing for closing. Chairs were stacked. Receipts were counted. The comforting energy of a busy Friday evening slowly faded. Maya eventually returned indoors and finished her remaining tasks. She thanked coworkers, wiped down tables, organized supplies. She moved through each responsibility with the same quiet professionalism she had shown all evening. Yet Daniel noticed one thing had changed. Earlier she had seemed anxious. Now she looked resigned. The difference unsettled him more than anxiety ever could. Resignation meant a person had stopped expecting things to improve. At 10:07 p.m., Maya collected her bag from the employee locker room. Through the glass front doors, she could see the rain falling harder now. The parking lot shimmered beneath rows of yellow lights. Somewhere beyond that darkness waited whatever conversation Travis expected to have. Maya stood still for several seconds. Then she reached for the door. What she did not know was that Daniel had already made a decision. For the first time in years, a memory he had spent decades suppressing was no longer asking to be ignored. And before Maya reached her car, Daniel Kong intended to find out whether history was about to repeat itself. The rain had grown heavier by the time Maya pushed through the restaurant's front door. Cold droplets tapped against the sidewalk and turned the parking lot into a mirror of blurred lights and shifting reflections. She tightened her jacket around herself and began walking toward her aging Honda Civic parked near the far edge of the lot. Every step felt heavier than it should have. Her phone vibrated again, then again, then again. She did not need to look to know who it was. For a moment she considered turning it off completely. Instead, she slipped it deeper into her pocket and kept walking. The sound of traffic from the nearby avenue mixed with the steady rhythm of rainfall. Around her, employees from neighboring businesses hurried to their cars, eager to get home. Nobody paid attention to Maya. Nobody noticed the conflict playing out behind her tired eyes. Halfway across the lot, headlights suddenly flashed. A dark sedan rolled slowly toward her before stopping several yards away. Travis stepped out. Even from a distance, Maya recognized the frustration written across his face. Her stomach sank. She had hoped he would leave. She had hoped tonight might somehow end differently. Instead, she found herself standing beneath the glow of a parking lot lamp while rain collected on her shoulders. Travis called her name. Maya stopped walking but did not move closer. "Why were you ignoring me?" he asked. His voice carried through the rain. Maya looked away. "I was working." "You always have an excuse." She closed her eyes briefly. The conversation felt painfully familiar. The accusations, the disappointment, the impossible expectation that she should somehow prevent every misunderstanding before it happened. "I am tired, Travis," she said quietly. "Can we please talk tomorrow?" Something changed in his expression. Not anger exactly. Something colder. Something that made Maya realize she no longer wanted to spend another year explaining herself. Or another month. Or another week. For the first time, the thought did not scare her. It relieved her. Across the parking lot, another vehicle sat idling near the curb. Daniel Kong watched through the windshield. His driver remained silent. His security team remained inside their vehicle farther down the block. Nobody spoke. Daniel's attention never left Maya. Years of experience had taught him to trust instincts he could not always explain. Tonight those instincts refused to stay quiet. Through the rain-speckled glass, he watched Maya take a small step backward while Travis continued speaking. He noticed the exhaustion on her face. He noticed something else as well. For the first time all evening, Maya was not trying to keep the peace. She was creating distance. Emotional distance. The first fragile step toward freedom. Daniel understood how difficult that step could be. Back near her car, Maya reached into her pocket and removed her keys. Her hands trembled slightly. Not from fear this time. From realization. Because somewhere between leaving the restaurant and standing in the rain, she had finally admitted something she had avoided for years. She was unhappy. Deeply unhappy. And no amount of patience seemed capable of fixing it. The realization felt terrifying. But it also felt honest. What Maya did not know was that while she stood at the edge of a decision that could change her future, Daniel Kong had already instructed someone to begin quietly gathering information. And before this rainy Seattle night was over, a truth about Travis Walker would emerge that neither Maya nor anyone else expected. The rain continued falling as Maya stood beside her car, her keys clenched tightly in one hand. Travis was still talking, still demanding answers she no longer had the energy to give. For years she had measured every word carefully, hoping the right response might finally bring peace. Tonight felt different. Tonight she felt empty. Not defeated. Simply exhausted. Across the parking lot, the black sedan's rear door opened. Maya did not notice at first. Neither did Travis. Daniel Kong stepped out into the rain without an umbrella. His charcoal coat darkened beneath the steady drizzle as he walked across the wet pavement with the calm confidence of someone who had never rushed anywhere in his life. The distance between them closed slowly. Deliberately. Travis finally noticed the approaching figure and frowned. "This is a private conversation," he called out. Daniel did not stop walking. His expression never changed. His eyes moved briefly toward Maya before returning to Travis. "Is it?" he asked quietly. The question was simple, yet something about it caused the air between them to shift. Maya looked up in surprise. She immediately recognized him from the restaurant. The quiet customer from the private booth. The man who had watched everything without saying a word. Daniel stopped several feet away. Close enough to speak. Far enough to avoid confrontation. "Miss Johnson," he said calmly. "Are you all right?" Maya blinked. Nobody had asked her that question in a very long time. Not the polite version people asked out of habit. The genuine version. The kind that required an honest answer. She opened her mouth, but found herself unable to speak. Travis stepped forward. "She is fine." Daniel's gaze remained on Maya. "I did not ask you." The words were delivered without anger, without aggression, yet they landed with surprising weight. For the first time all evening, someone had spoken as though Maya's voice mattered more than the argument happening around her. Rainwater dripped from her hair as she stared at Daniel. "I am tired," she finally admitted. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Daniel nodded slowly. "I believe you." The simple acknowledgement nearly broke something inside her. Nearby, Daniel's phone vibrated. He glanced down briefly. A message from one of his investigators. Information requested less than an hour earlier was already arriving. Daniel read the summary once, then a second time. His expression remained controlled, but his eyes hardened slightly. The report described a pattern. Multiple complaints. Former coworkers. Former relationships. Repeated concerns that never quite reached the level of criminal charges but painted a troubling picture. Daniel looked back toward Travis. Suddenly many things made sense. Maya noticed the subtle change. So did Travis. "What is this?" Travis demanded. "Who are you?" Daniel slipped the phone back into his pocket. "Someone who dislikes seeing people carry burdens they should not have to carry alone." The parking lot fell quiet except for the rain. Maya felt her heartbeat quicken. For reasons she could not explain, the fear that had followed her all evening seemed smaller now. Not gone, just smaller. And as Daniel Kong stood calmly beneath the Seattle rain, Maya realized that this might be the first night in years that someone had chosen not to look away. For several long seconds, nobody spoke. Rain continued falling across the parking lot, washing over the pavement and blurring the reflections of nearby streetlights. Travis shifted uncomfortably beneath Daniel's steady gaze. He had expected an argument. He had expected intimidation. What he had not expected was silence. Daniel Kong stood perfectly calm, his hands resting at his sides as though he had all the time in the world. That calmness unsettled Travis far more than raised voices ever could. Maya watched the two men carefully. Something was changing. For years, every disagreement in her life had followed the same exhausting pattern. Defend. Explain. Apologize. Repeat. Yet Daniel seemed completely uninterested in playing that game. He was not trying to win an argument. He was simply observing, studying, waiting. Daniel's phone vibrated again. Another message appeared from his investigator. Additional details had arrived. Employment records, witness statements, information that painted an even clearer picture than before. Daniel read each line carefully. Several names appeared repeatedly. Different women, different years, similar experiences, similar concerns. None of it proved criminal behavior, but patterns rarely lied. Daniel understood patterns better than most people. He slipped the phone back into his pocket and looked toward Maya. "How long have you worked at the restaurant?" he asked. The question surprised her. "Almost 2 years. And before that, a coffee shop near Pike Place Market." Daniel nodded. "Same apartment?" Maya hesitated. "For 4 years." Travis frowned. "Why are you asking her these questions?" Daniel ignored him. "Do you like your job?" Maya blinked. Nobody had ever asked that either. She thought about the customers she enjoyed serving, the co-workers who made difficult days easier, the satisfaction of helping her brother stay in school. Slowly, she nodded. "Yes, I do." "Good." Daniel's voice remained calm. "Because people should not have to give up the things they value simply because someone else makes life difficult." The words hung in the air. Maya felt them settle somewhere deep inside her. Nearby, Travis folded his arms. "You do not know anything about our relationship." Daniel finally looked directly at him. "You are correct. I know very little about your relationship." His expression never changed. "I only know what I observed tonight. I observed a woman who seemed afraid to answer her phone. I observed a woman who apologized constantly. I observed a woman who looked relieved when she was left alone." Travis opened his mouth, but found no immediate response. The rain seemed louder now. The city traffic farther away seemed quieter. Maya lowered her eyes. Because every word Daniel spoke felt painfully accurate. For years she had convinced herself that nobody could possibly understand what she was experiencing. Yet somehow a stranger had recognized it in a single evening. Daniel turned his attention back toward her. "Miss Johnson, you said you were tired." Maya nodded. "Then perhaps it is time to stop carrying responsibilities that were never yours to carry." Her breath caught. The statement was simple, gentle, yet it felt like someone had finally given voice to thoughts she had been suppressing for years. And standing there beneath the Seattle rain, Maya realized that the future she feared losing might never have existed at all. The future waiting for her could be something entirely different. Maya stood motionless as the rain continued falling around them. For years she had explained away every disappointment, every uncomfortable feeling, every moment when her instincts told her something was wrong. Hearing a complete stranger describe her life with such clarity felt almost unreal. Travis looked increasingly frustrated. The conversation had slipped beyond his control, and for perhaps the first time, Maya noticed something important. He was no longer the center of her attention. Daniel's words had forced her to look inward instead of outward, to ask herself questions she had spent years avoiding. What did she actually want? What kind of life was she trying to build? Why had she become so accustomed to carrying the emotional weight of someone else's expectations? Her eyes filled with tears she had fought to hold back all evening. Not tears of fear, not tears of embarrassment, tears of exhaustion. I do not even remember when I stopped being happy, she admitted quietly. The confession surprised even her. Once spoken, the words could not be taken back. Daniel listened without interruption. He did not offer quick advice. He did not pretend to have all the answers. He simply allowed her honesty to exist. Sometimes that was the greatest gift a person could offer. Maya wiped rainwater and tears from her face. Every time I thought about leaving, I convinced myself things would get better. Every time something felt wrong, I told myself I was overreacting. After a while, I stopped trusting my own judgment. Daniel nodded slowly. That happens when someone spends too much time seeking permission to feel what they already know is true. The statement settled heavily in the quiet night air. Maya lowered her eyes. Deep down, she had known for a long time that the relationship was not bringing peace into her life. She had simply been afraid of what came next. Afraid of uncertainty. Afraid of disappointing people. Afraid of starting over. Yet standing there now, she realized she had already been paying a much higher price. She had been sacrificing her confidence one small piece at a time. Nearby, Travis attempted to interrupt again, but Maya raised her hand gently. For the first time in years, she was not asking for permission to speak. She was choosing to speak. I need space, she said firmly. Her voice trembled, but the words remained steady. I need time to think about what I want. The parking lot fell silent. Daniel said nothing. He did not need to. This was not his decision to make. It never had been. The decision belonged to Maya. And as she heard her own voice declaring a boundary she had been afraid to establish for years, something inside her shifted. The fear did not disappear completely. Real change rarely happened that way. But courage had arrived. Small, fragile, real. Daniel glanced toward the city skyline beyond the rain. For a brief moment, he thought about his mother, about all the things he wished someone had said to her years ago. Then he looked back at Maya and saw something he had not seen earlier that evening. Hope, faint but unmistakable. And for the first time that night, Maya Johnson began to believe that her future might belong to her again. 6 months later, the rain-soaked parking lot felt like a lifetime ago. Spring sunlight streamed through the large front windows of a small community center on the south side of Seattle, filling the room with warmth and possibility. Maya Johnson stood near a welcome desk, greeting women who had come seeking guidance, resources, and encouragement during difficult transitions in their lives. What had started as a simple volunteer project had slowly grown into something much larger. With support from local organizations, counselors, and community leaders, Maya had helped create a place where people could be heard without judgment. Every time someone walked through the doors carrying fear, uncertainty, or self-doubt, she remembered exactly how that felt. Marcus had graduated near the top of his class 2 months earlier. Watching him cross the stage had been one of the proudest moments of her life. For the first time in years, Maya no longer felt responsible for holding the entire world together by herself. She had learned something powerful. Caring for others did not require sacrificing your own well-being. One Saturday afternoon, as volunteers prepared for an upcoming workshop, a familiar black sedan pulled quietly into the parking lot. Maya noticed it through the window and smiled. Daniel Kong stepped out dressed far more casually than the night they first met. He carried a small box filled with donated office supplies. No cameras, no publicity, no announcement, just another quiet act of support. That was how he preferred it. You never tell anyone how much you help, Maya said as he carried the box inside. Daniel glanced around the busy center. Women were talking. Children were laughing. Hope filled the room. The center exists because of you, he replied. I only opened a few doors. Maya laughed softly. She knew better. There were moments in life when a single person changed the direction of your story simply by refusing to look away. Daniel never spoke much about his mother, but Maya understood enough. Some wounds never disappeared completely. They simply became reasons to protect others. Before leaving, Daniel paused near the entrance and looked back across the room. The woman standing there was very different from the exhausted waitress he had met months earlier. Her shoulders were no longer weighed down by uncertainty. Her smile reached her eyes now. Most importantly, she trusted her own voice. Maya walked him to the door. "Thank you," she said quietly. Daniel smiled faintly. "For what?" Maya looked around the center. At the people being helped. At the future being built one day at a time. For noticing. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Daniel nodded and stepped outside into the afternoon sunlight. As his car disappeared down the street, Maya returned to the people waiting inside. The room felt brighter than ever. And that day, everyone who walked through those doors was reminded of something simple but powerful. Respect is not a gift reserved for the powerful. Dignity belongs to every person. And sometimes, the most important thing one human being can do for another is simply refuse to look away.